Hey guys, it is Mr. Wolfie, and I am here. Actually, you know me as your local Jacob. I don't know. I just still go by that. Thinking about changing my entire YouTube everything because there's been this whole thing about, like losing the partnership stuff because you didn't get enough views or whatever. I got enough subs, but not the views. Anyway, let's talk about some important stuff. It's really important. This whole gun rights debate and everything, and just the gun control debate and the mass shootings and everything, we really are not talking about things the right way. I want to preface this whole thing by saying that a friend actually gave me the details. If you do the math, then gun violence accounts for less than 1% of all the deaths in America annually. So, taking that on its own, you realize that, gun violence definitely isn't our biggest problem. It could be a problem. We can still discuss that, but it's not the problem that's causing the most deaths or anything. Now, then you account for the fact that 2/3 of those deaths are suicides and accidents. Then you account for that most of the ones that are violent crime related are committed with handguns. And then you subtract even more for every other gun that's not the AR-15, and when you get down to it, if my math was correct, it was something like 0.02% of deaths annually in the United States come from a semi-automatic rifle like the AR-15 or a similar rifle. So it's a tricky situation because this much outcry and this much debate and this much discussion about changing the Constitution is coming from something that is more of a scapegoat than the actual source of problems. And once again, we need to have the conversation about how to prevent hypothetical situations where people that seriously intend to harm people can get a hold of these. There's been several significant shootings that involved semi-automatic rifles and things like that. So, and the goal is to prevent that from getting worse, not to pretend that this is some kind of massive loss of life constantly, because it's really not. It's few and far between, but the reason it's so shocking is because it's so few and far between. If this was happening every day, no one would give a flying crap. They would be like, please, I don't want to get rid of the AR-15 because I want one because everybody's killing everybody. They would be like needing one. Now, I personally don't even have a semi-automatic rifle. And I'm not saying that just to make myself seem vulnerable or make myself seem up and above people, because I don't, for one, they're expensive, and I just don't have the funds to spend $800 on a halfway decent one, with all the perks. It doesn't really fit any needs that I have, per se. I live pretty rurally. Unless, like, the KKK came and, like, started burning crosses in my yard or something, I wouldn't have to deal with large numbers of people, probably. I would most likely, if anybody broke in, it would be the crazy meth head down the street. And I have several things that would work for that individual, including my sword if it came down to it. I'd rather not have to resort to this in a bad situation, but I like having options. I like being able to... I like knowing that I could punch somebody out if I had to, for one. I like knowing that I have this. I like it when I have a baseball bat near the door. I like having a variety of knives, both for hunting purposes and other things. But you don't have to have semi-automatic rifles. That's the first step. You also don't have to ask the government to get rid of them. See, here's the thing. A lot of people have completely ignored this point. You don't have to ask the government to ban these things. You don't have to. You can. It's not going to go very far. The Second Amendment doesn't allow you to, the government to do much. Second Amendment isn't a list of things the government, or the Second Amendment isn't, or, okay, let me get this right. The Bill of Rights, specifically, are not a list of things that you can do. It's not a list of your freedoms. It's a list of things the government can't do. And one thing the government can't do is make sure that the American people can't have guns. Not as long as the Second Amendment lasts. I'm looking up because I actually have a copy of the Constitution right there. So, the whole point is the government can't do it. So why petition and beg the government to change the rules when the easiest thing to do would be to go to the people that sell and manufacture the guns and be like, I'd rather you stopped, or I'd rather you change the rules. I'd rather, Academy Sports or Dick's Sporting Goods, I'd rather you sell guns that don't fit these parameters, or sell them differently, require a different age limit. Something like that. I mean, that's within the bounds of within the bounds of possibility. I showed you at the beginning of this video some ammo types of some of the weapons that I have. Frankly, I have, let me see. Okay. This is pretty basic handgun, in my case. I got it mostly because I like the way it looks. I like Westerns. It's nothing special. It's not something I would like to carry into a bad situation, really. I could, but it's not practical. It's a single action 22. That's not going to likely be the thing to go to. Now this is a 9mm handgun with a 16 round ammo capacity. The magazine, I have one spare. I'm trying to get it back in here. A 9mm is kind of very standard. Nothing special to it. In fact, a lot of people don't really care for the round. This is the 22. This went to that first gun I just showed you. This goes to the second gun. This is the 9mm. See the size difference alone? 9mm, it's not going to be very much in terms of range, but from a home defense standpoint, it's pretty much fantastic. It's going to do it. It's going to do the job. If that doesn't work, you could always use a 20 or 12 gauge shotgun shell, which I'm not going to show you those. That's, a lot of people use shotguns for self-defense, home defense, that sort of thing. It's viable. Then I have 30-30. So that's the biggest and probably most deadly bullet caliber I have access to, personally. If anything goes down, I would probably opt for this. It's just a Henry 22. It's the first gun I ever shot with. It's the gun I learned to shoot with. It's a lever action. It's actually got a pretty decent capacity, but it's only shooting those 22 rounds, so 22 can kill people. If someone's breaking in your house, you can pop them with 3 or 4 of those, and they're going down too. Then my 30-30 is really just decked out for hunting and other purposes like that. So it's, if it came down to it, it would be an effective round for home and self-defense, but as it stands, I wouldn't recommend that because it's too much going on. If you're talking about somebody in your house, quicker better. 9mm or that Henry rifle would be decent because it's short. That was just me to preface. That was just stuff I was saying to preface the real problem. People don't talk about this right. They don't. They completely ignore the grand overall point, which is we need to stop splitting off into 2 groups of yes or no people and lobbing hate at the other side without listening to anybody. There's some legitimate concerns. This CNN town hall thing was an absolute joke. They loaded the entire audience with people it's all about pressing an agenda. Right now, it's not so much about gun rights, gun ownership, anything. It's about what can we say and do that will get Donald Trump to not be reelected and get more Democrats in the House and Congress. It's propaganda, is what I'm getting at. And both sides use propaganda, but right now, the media is mostly extremely liberal. The media is mostly backing pure Democrats. If a person on CNN or MSNBC or any of those other, anybody but Fox News really, says that they're conservative or Republican or, they're the voice of reason, it's untrue. They are actually part of the group of people that are trying to share misinformation and or just, it doesn't even have to be misinformation. It just has to be cherry-picked information, right? It's tricky because sometimes they're not wrong. It's just obvious that the agenda is there. It's like these kids from the Parkland shooting, the survivors, immediately had accounts on, say, social media like Twitter that they were verified. And they had tons of subscribers within like a day or two. And no one seems to find that fishy. I'm not saying anything about them. I'm saying that obviously somebody is using them to press the agenda. Somebody's using them as puppets. It reminds me of a lot of things that have happened before. It's actually not an uncommon occurrence to take somebody that would make a good figurehead and just riding the wave. All these politicians and celebrities and everything that are jumping behind everything the kids say. They're like, oh, these are the future, man. They're gonna change the world. They're gonna do everything that I want them to do. A lot of kids are one way in high school and they change their opinions later. I don't anticipate these people to change much on their opinions about gun ownership. Who better than a mass shooting survivor than to argue that guns shouldn't be allowed in civilian hands at all? Can't blame them there. But then there's also a lot of kids that have said otherwise that are getting ignored, like several of the JROTC kids and probably some. It's Florida. There's got to be some hunters and children of hunters that are also, and children of the military that are also part of the student body, but they're not getting airtime anywhere, except for maybe Fox News. I don't know much about that, but it's just there's something not right going on here, and it bothers me because this sort of thing. If this was just your basic, we're just going to chit-chat about a topic and debate about it and go about our merry way, this is talking about fundamentally changing the Constitution of the United States of America and also altering who gets voted into office based on using school children and a tragedy and several tragedies as the basis of a campaign to go after gun ownership in general, the NRA specifically, in order to alter the political landscape, as it were. And where does that end? Yes, I don't care much for the Republicans. They very rarely do anything right from my point of view. The Democrats have increasingly gotten worse about doing things that I don't care much about, and just their behavior is bad. Like I can taste the hate they have for people. The hate they have for citizens of the United States. It's almost impossible to find a Democrat on social media that isn't just seething with venom and hatred towards everyone, but specifically people that don't automatically agree with every word they say. Republicans mostly kind of laugh it off, and or they have a habit of, trolling or getting angry, or, they're in control right now, so they don't have to be as afraid. But the political landscape is absolute garbage right now in America, and I don't know. I've gotten off on a tangent. I was mostly just going to be talking about alternatives. That's what I was wanting to talk about, alternatives. I kind of support the idea of a increase in the age in which you can buy guns. Like a 21 years old is a decent idea for specifically semi-automatic rifles and handguns, in my opinion. Semi-automatic rifles and handguns are kind of the peak gun type you can get in America without a very advanced license. And I don't think they're good first guns for sure, or good guns to learn on. Now, what I mean by that is, I think children, or parents who want their children to learn about guns, parents who want their children to hunt, and children that want to hunt, and that's a good starting point. And then we'll get into the target shooting and all that other stuff, because I do believe that, I'm not saying that guns are just for hunting, not at all, because guns are actually, if you read the Second Amendment, to arm yourselves in the event of needing to form a militia. So, in order to form a militia, you have to have the proper gear. So the goal of the Second Amendment is to actually say, if we need to form a militia, we need people to be ready. Don't take away things that people need to be ready. So, it makes sense to look at it from a point of view that the government shouldn't be able to tell us what we can and can't have. It's already, they already violate a lot of things. Anyway, the point is, I think, I can't imagine there being any logic to making this that much harder to get. It's 22 lever action. Like, why are you going to put this in the same boat as, an AR-15 with a large capacity magazine? It seems unfair in a lot of ways and illogical. I mean, how many mass shootings have been conducted with a shotgun, shotgun, there's actually been several, but a lever action rifle? I couldn't find any. I looked it up. I couldn't find any. Yet they're being considered to be regulated just the same as an AR-15 by a lot of people who think that people shouldn't even own these. I don't see the logic. But then there's not a lot of logic involved in some of this stuff. I think so this whole arming school teachers thing is pointless and silly in a lot of ways. I think school teachers that already know how to use guns should be allowed to carry them if they can verify. If you got a school teacher that's ex-military, ex-police, that has taken NRA safety courses, they're a certified shooting instructor, stuff like that, they should be allowed to carry a gun, because the fact of the matter is, regardless of any other legislation involved, schools are going to need to be protected for some time. If the government banned guns right now, confiscated every gun they could right now, you would still have enough guns out there that people shouldn't be having, like illegally purchased guns and things, that there would still be shootings, and it would just, be silly to ignore the idea of protecting people on school campuses and things like that. I mean, they protect people. They protect the bank with guns. Was money more important than children? So I guess it is to a lot of people. Let's see. Mental health is always a topic that it's run into the ground. Our mental health care is just terrible here. That would at least help a lot of suicides. I think proper storage is a huge deal that people ignore, and the responsibility of parents and gun owners for keeping guns away from children. And so many accidental deaths would be alleviated just by locking them up or putting them out of reach. I mean, it's fine to stage them, especially if you're by yourself. Stage them, yes, but don't leave a gun in a place that a young child can get. Especially, I keep mine in a safe. It's easy to get into, but a 4-year-old that was visiting my house wouldn't be able to, accidentally get a hold of one. It's unacceptable to do that sort of thing to me. So, I don't know, that's just a few suggestions. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. I've rambled for 20 minutes, and I apologize, you guys. I don't even know if I talked about everything I wanted to talk about, or talked about much about what I wanted to talk about. I haven't made a video in a while, and I really felt like I needed to kind of touch base with you guys. But anyway, be good to each other. Peace out. Love you guys. This has been Mr. Wolfie.